All right, and we are back here on the GSMC football podcast. And for the third topic of the show, we are going to talk about Dan Campbell and Jared Goff addressing the media, kind of, talk about the Lions and their playoff loss to the 49ers more. So, for Dan Campbell, basically what I got out of it is, we can't be complicit. That's some of the things that I got from that. Can't be complicit. Because it's hard to get back to this point, which is very true. I mean, he did say that he told the team that this might be our only shot, and I think it's good to have a head coach that kind of puts things into perspective, and you don't have some of these head coaches that come in and they just sound so robotic. This guy is a leader. And I know a lot of people are very disappointed with, what happened in this game, that the Lions had this game. And, being overly aggressive kind of costed the Lions, a trip to the Super Bowl, which I agree. And we'll see if Dan Campbell, adapts and he doesn't go that route as much next year. Because, again, I think that could cost you, and it could cost your job. It could cost you your job. And the other thing too is another important thing that he was asked about is Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator. One of the better play callers in the league. The Lions. Listen, this Lions offense is good. I mean, we talked about the 49ers and their weapons. The Lions have weapons on that offense too. And again, I talked about if this guy can, become more of a player. Jameson Williams, I mean, you see what he can do, with his speed. And, you look at what he did on that end around play. I mean, listen, he's shown flashes here and there, but it's that consistency. Because if he could become that number 2 guy to Amon-Ra St. Brown, I mean, there's another weapon for you. So, but, with Ben Johnson probably going to leave. He's probably going to take one of those 2 head coaching positions, whether it's with the Seahawks or it's with the Commanders. Now, they did say on the telecast, Kevin Burkhardt did say that he's the favorite to get the Commanders job. He did say that. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's at least what I heard on the telecast. We'll see what happens. But, that's going to be a big loss. And, Dan Campbell said that. He said, we're not going to be in a rush. We're going to find the right guy for that. And he also said, the other things that he said, too, is, he wants to continue to build this roster and bring in guys that fit the culture. He said, it doesn't matter, when it comes to talent, you got to be able to fit the culture like the guys that they already have. And I think that's also important, too, because you don't want to bring in somebody that kind of, puts that causes a rift. You want someone that's going to buy in and follow, what this team's been able to do the last couple of seasons. But at the same time, if a player is not meeting the expectations of the team, he also said you don't want to get attached to a player. Like, you have to be able to make that decision and, let go of somebody if, they're not doing their job. It doesn't matter how much you like them. Because you go back to Craig Reynolds, their third running back. I mean, he was somebody that was kind of on the bubble to getting cut, and they kept him because they just, he, buys into the culture, and they just felt like, I guess, that he had a role on this team. I mean, he did score a touchdown last week against the Bucs when they went for it on 4th and 1. And when Montgomery and Gibbs got hurt in the first Bucs game, he had to step in and be the lead rusher, even though he didn't really run for a ton of yards. But still, if there's someone that doesn't really have a role on the team and, they're not really producing and you got to make a tough decision, you got to do that. It's hard. And that's the business aspect of it. He really, and he also just talked about how they just got outplayed in all 3 phases of the game, and he was saying how, usually if there's one aspect of the game that's lacking, the others pick them up. But he said in this case, with the collapse against the 49ers, all 3 phases just collapsed. I mean, special teams, offense, and defense. I mean, the 49ers, the momentum shifted to them, it was game over for the Lions. They kicked the field goal. Then you had, Ayuk with the big catch. And actually, funny thing with that, so he was watching, Ayuk, posted a video of him watching, ESPN doing their top 10, and his catch was not number one. It was number two. The Lamar Jackson reception when it got batted up in the air and he caught it, that was number one. So he wasn't happy about that, but I just wanted to touch upon that. But, Ayuk makes that catch, and then, they get the McCaffrey touchdown, and then immediately after that, Gibbs fumbles. And then they score on that, and, yeah, that was basically it. I mean, that lead evaporated so fast for the Lions. And, they just didn't make plays. I mean, Josh Reynolds, you got to hold on to the ball, man. I mean, if you catch that, but at the same time, you should have took the points. Even Tom Brady said that. We just talked about Brady. He even said you got to take the points in that situation. But, I think Josh Reynolds also should catch the ball. These guys got to catch the ball. The drops also were costly in this game. But, yeah, listen, I'm a Dan Campbell guy. I hope this doesn't lead to kind of a downward spiral for him as the coach of the Lions, because you know what? He's gotten them this far. Again, the Lions haven't been able to they never, hosting back-to-back home playoff games and winning a playoff game for the first time in 30 years. You're, on the doorsteps of getting to a Super Bowl. I just, who else is going to do that? Who are you going to get if Lions fans or whoever wants Dan Campbell gone because of, the coaching decisions? Who are you going to bring in that's going to do a better job? Who? And again, it also helps when you have good coordinators, because that's why, losing Ben Johnson, we'll see what the Lions look like next year when he's not the offensive coordinator. Because again, you look at what happened with the Eagles, and when they lost Gannon and Shane Steichen. The team was not the same, and they collapsed at the end of the season. So I like what he said, that they're not going to rush, and exactly, you don't want to rush into a decision. But odds are he's going to be gone. And rightfully so. Look what he's been able to do with this offense. So, we'll see. But listen, I understand Lions fans and their pain, but I think you got to take a step back and say, look at the season that we had. He was one of the main reasons for that. Let's see now what happens next year. Because now if the Lions go on a tailspin, then maybe you do have to have that conversation. But I don't know. I still think this team is going to be good. Next, it's going to be tougher though. He is right when he says, this could be our only shot, because the conference will be better next year. Your division is going to be better next year. So we'll just have to wait and see. But also with Jared Goff, what's interesting is, so he's entering a contract year. So it isn't a guarantee that he's going to be. Now, I figure him and the Lions are going to work something out. Because what Jared Goff has been able to do, he's improved pretty much every season that he's been the Lions quarterback. The first year was rough. Second year, they improved the second half of the year, almost made the playoffs. This year, you make it to the NFC Championship game, and he played well in all three playoff games. Listen, and the Rams traded him to get Stafford. They won the Super Bowl. Stafford never got the Lions to this point. Jared Goff did. So I think he's got to be their guy moving forward. Now, I think this is going to be a discussion that they're going to have, of course, and eventually I think a deal is going to work out. But I just thought that was interesting, because he said he would love to be back, but it's it's not in his control. He loves the players, loves the staff, but it's not in his it's not in his control. But I think you have to. You got to bring him back, right? Because again, look how far they got. But you do kind of wish that the Lions were able to get it done and get to the Super Bowl, because I think it means a lot to him, what he's been through the last couple of years. And, his old team kind of just said, yeah, you're not going to get us to where we want to go. And even though he did get them to the Super Bowl, it's just, didn't play well. And that's motivated him. I mean, they beat the Rams, and he played well. He played well against the Bucs, and, he played well in this game, against a tough defense that's, kind of owned him, at points in his career. So, I mean, well, at least when, the 49ers became a really good team, because before that, I mean, the Rams would beat them the previous couple of seasons, that he was the QB. But, yeah, I just think, they gotta, they'll work something out. They'll work something out. And, he proved some doubters wrong. Because it looked like, again, he was looked to be a kind of a bridge quarterback, and no, he's the guy. He's the guy going forward, and the fan base loves him. I mean, Jared Goff chants at the NFC Championship game Sunday. So they love him. I mean, you got a young team. You got two studs at running back. You got a stud at wide receiver. You started at the tight end spot. The offensive line is solid. You got to continue to build up that defense and get another weapon. To throw to opposite of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Again, Jameson Williams is a player that could be that because we've seen some sparks here and there of that, but we're just looking for that consistency. So, the Lions aren't going anywhere, but again. Conference is going to be harder next year. The division is going to be tough, especially, with the Bears, the Packers, and, depending on what the Vikings do at quarterback. You bring back Kirk Cousins, I mean, to go back, and a healthy TJ Hawkinson who got surgery recently on his ACL and MCL, because he got hurt late in the season. Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, all those guys. Kirk Cousins comes back healthy. I mean, that team's going to be tough. I mean, the Vikings, they looked like they were going to make the playoffs at one point, so it's going to be tougher. But the Lions are a really good team. And, if they continue to build this team right and you keep this core together, they could find themselves back in this position next year. So we'll see. But I don't know. I just thought that was interesting because I honestly didn't really think about Goff's contract situation. But I mean, I would think that the Lions would bring him back. I would think the Lions are gonna try to extend him to a long-term deal. Because listen, it is hard. I mean, you see some of these teams, they are struggling to find their franchise guy. And listen, is Jared Goff on the level of the top guys, Patrick Mahomes? No. But you know what? He's in that I would say he's in like that second tier. I think so. Depending on how you rank him. Well, Mahomes is kind of in his own tier, if you really think about it. So maybe he's in like that third tier. So, but he's a solid quarterback. Jared Goff is a solid quarterback. You give him the right weapons, you put him in the right system, he's going to produce. And that's what he's done. That's what he's done here. I mean, what quarterback is going to succeed if he's got basically nothing around him? No offensive line, no running game, nothing. No quarterback's going to be able to do that. But the Lions have been able to build this team up, and he played really well this year. So hopefully the Lions extend him. So when we come back from our final break of the show, we are then going to talk about the Chiefs and what is going on with Kadarius Toney, because that situation has been very strange. So with that being said, stick around and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.